Do you want to learn how to play Winston? Then listen carefully. First, I will teach you how to use your abilities. Winston has 2 abilities, 1 ult, and an alternative fire. His first ability is his leap. When you press it, you jump a certain distance depending where you're looking at and also depending on which movement keys you're pressing. That means that if you're holding W, you're gonna go much further, and if you're holding S, you're gonna go much further back. If you go press A or D, you're gonna go left or right accordingly. This way, you can precisely land where you wanna land. You deal 50 damage if you land on top of someone, and deal less damage the further away someone is from your landing position. This is your mobility ability, and if you screw it up, you're dead. Use it to take high ground, use it to dive their Zen, use it to run away, use it to finish off low HP targets. It's a simple ability with a lot of depth. You can also jump just after you land to do a little bunny hop. This allows you to traverse a larger distance. Okay, did you understand anything? I'm gonna give you 3 seconds to master the ability before we continue. Alright, by now you should have mastered it. Now, there's one more thing you can do to maximize your damage output. It's very important and every Winston player uses it, so you should learn it as well. After you leap, just before you land, you should melee to deal 30 more damage. This way, you can deal 80 damage on unsuspecting support players and make their day miserable. This allows you to animation cancel the melee, so it's just free damage. We call this a Goomba Stomp. Next up, Bubble. This is one of your most important abilities, and if you waste it, you're gonna lose your game. It's really simple. You place a shield in the shape of a bubble that has 700 HP. That's it. There's nothing else to it. Use it to block CC when you dive, like an Ana Sleep or Nade. Use it to block ultimates like Shatter and High Noon. If they have high damage like Zenyatta, you should use it pretty early so you don't die immediately. If they don't have high damage like Lucio or Morga, you can be greedier and stall the bubble placement a bit. But it also blocks things like Bead, because Bead works on LOS, line of sight. It also blocks healing like Ana healing, Kiriko healing, Baptiste healing, Moira healing, and so on. But some heroes can heal even through your bubble, for example Mercy and Zen. So if you're diving 2 supports and one of them is Mercy, you should probably focus her down so you can kill her and then kill the other support. Otherwise, you're gonna be wasting your time while Mercy heals all your damage. The longer you can get away without using it, the better. But remember one thing, you cannot dive if you have no bubble, so use it sparingly. These are the only 2 abilities you have, and they might seem easy to use, but if you want to win every game, then you will have to perfect them. There's a lot of room for error, and playing Winston is very punishing. One missed bubble, then the Hawk hooks you, and we all know what happens then. Now, on top of those 2 abilities, we have a brand new old fire. And that means that all Winston gamers are classified simps. Sniper Monkey. Congratulations on your AWP license. Now let's teach you how to become simple on tank. Firstly, you're gonna have to learn what his right click actually does and how it works. It's a beam type weapon that is also hit scan, so it instantly lands on the target you're looking at as long as they're within 30 meters range. That means it goes through Deflect, Matrix, Sigma Grasp, and Risa Spin. It takes 13 ammo to fully charge the right click and deal 50 damage, and you can also charge it up even if you have 1 ammunition left. Now that we have the basics out of the way, let's get into how to actually use it. The most useful, obvious, and overall famous way to use your new Winston right click is by combining it with your Goomba Stomp. Goomba Stomp being the combo where just before you land, you melee for 80 burst damage. So now with the new Winston Sniper, you can actually add 50 more damage and make it to 130 damage. How do you do it, you might ask? Well, it's pretty simple. Papa Bogur is gonna teach you. First, you want to start charging up your right click when you start your leap. And just before you land on someone, you should look at them, do the 50 damage, and then do the melee animation cancel combo. Be careful though, because you can cancel your right click charge up by meleeing or pressing left click. The 2 other situations you want to use your right click for are poking enemies before the fight begins or finishing them off when they're low HP. Lastly, we have the best ultimate in the game. Winston ult or Primal Rage does a few things. It instantly heals you and sets your HP to 1050 with some armor sprinkled on top. It also makes your hitbox extremely large. It locks you from using any abilities except Leap. Leap is now on a 2-second cooldown. And finally, it replaces your primary fire with a melee that does more damage and boosts people far away. Your melees can be comboed in quick succession to deal massive damage. This is what people call juggling, and it's what separates good Winston players from bad. Outside of juggling, there's a few ways that you want to use your ultimate. First and foremost, the most obvious way is to get kills. If somebody is low HP and you think you can't kill them normally, then don't be scared to use your primal to burst them down. This also applies to people who make the grave mistake of sitting on the edge. You just pop primal and boop them into the abyss. Getting even one kill, especially against the support, is always worth, and 4v5, especially with an ulting monkey, is almost unlosable. There is little value in saving your ultimate for the big Reddit plays unless you're bogur. Second of all, you can use primal to play way more aggressive and create a lot more space for your team. For example, if you see their tanks / DPS engaging, you can go extra aggro into the enemy backline and try to kill someone. Mind you, you don't always have to kill people. All you have to do is be a really annoying monkey and not die. Big emphasis on not dying. Just try not to do it when their entire team is staring at you, because that usually ends up badly. Third of all, you can use primal to stay alive longer when you're low HP. For example, when contesting point, or if you're getting focused by the enemy team. In general, this is your last resort, but be careful not to do it when the fight is unwinnable. Otherwise, you're just gonna feed the entire population of Bulgaria and waste your ult. Now, let's get into fun Winston ultimate tips. When you use your ult, you reset your leap cooldown. Your leap cooldown also gets reset whenever your ult ends. This means you can combo it to deal around 100 HP on unsuspecting enemies. But I personally believe you should use your double leap at the end of your ult to go back to your team. Fun fact number 2. If you use your melee just before your primal, your melee cooldown resets so you can melee again right after. This way you can deal 70 damage very quickly. Finally, you can get one extra melee attack at the end of your primal that actually doesn't play any animation, but it still deals damage and boosts enemies. Overall, the possibilities are endless with this ultimate, but it's very hard to use and you will be easily killed because it makes your hitbox as big as your mom. Also, be wary of your arch nemesis, the sleep dart, because good Anas will save their sleep dart for your ultimate. So the higher you're gonna climb, the better you're gonna have to be with baiting it. This doesn't only apply to Ana's sleep dart, it applies to any cooldown. Roadhog hook, Sigma rock, you name it, it doesn't matter. You're gonna have to bait these cooldowns if you wanna have an effective primal rage. You can easily dodge the CC by either using your leap or your bubble, or just by juking them with some funny movement. Now it's time for me to teach you how to actually play the game. First and foremost, you need to understand how to engage and who to engage. No, we're not talking about marriage, we're talking about Winston dives. The very first thing you need to ask yourself is, what tank are they playing? Are they playing something that easily counters you like Diva or Roadhog? And if they are, you need to be extra careful when you dive. I've made this very useful tier list for all of you that want to figure out what is the best target to dive. Now, by no means is this perfect, but it should give you a pretty good idea of which targets are the best ones to actually focus. As you can see on top of this tier list, these are your top priority targets and people you should focus 24/7. They're really weak to dives, and if you play your cards right, they will not get any value whatsoever and you make their day miserable. Opposite of that, on the bottom of the list are targets you should never dive. Big emphasis on Roadhog, Diva, and Reaper. These characters will instantly murder you and you will not have a great time. The second tier below big diveable are targets you should still focus, but they're gonna be a little bit harder to dive because of their cooldowns. So in some instances, you're gonna wait for their cooldowns to finish them off, or you're gonna dive them to bait the cooldowns. Now, in rarely diveable, there are targets that you should probably not focus, but under the right condition you can still kill them pretty easily. Once Bastion does his turret form thing where he deals 1 million damage per second, after that you can go and dive him and kill him pretty easily, but otherwise he counters you really hard. Another example is Zarya. If she has no bubbles, you can dive her, deny heals, and kill her really fast. I will not go over every single hero here because that's gonna be too much of a waste, but you can figure it out on your own and let me know what you think down in the comments below. Now let's get into a few in-game examples of how to actually play the game. In this example here, where I played against a Baptiste and a Lucio, I instantly spot that their Baptiste is probably on high ground, so I jump him to deny space and make him panic. When he actually drops from the high ground, he gets picked off by my DPS and we get a really good first pick. Now, I do want to point out a few things about this dive. First and foremost, I didn't use my bubble because I didn't need to use my bubble against that Baptiste up top. I knew nobody could contest me because they had a Zarya and a Lucio. Now, a lot of you are gonna wonder, how did I know the Baptiste was on high ground? Well, it's pretty simple. The biggest giveaway was the fact that the Lucio and the Zarya went to high ground and then dropped, which probably meant that the Baptiste followed them because they want to use the Lucio speed boost and get to card faster. After we get the first pick, it's very important for us not to rush into things and just die off one by one. Their lack of heal means that they cannot maintain the space they have, which means we'll slowly push them away and force them into a worse position. Once they're in a worse position, you keep pressuring them so they make some mistakes, and when you find the mistake, you finish them off and win the fight. Now let's move on to the next game, where I actually decide that I will not hard dive anyone and instead create space by taking the left room on first point New Queen Street. After I manage to take over the left room, I force out the Sojourn, which puts her in a very bad position, on point. Even though my teammates died, that doesn't mean much because the enemies cannot actually kill me. If they try to push me too hard, then they won't have healing, which means they will die to me. Not to mention that my Kiriko actually comes to me and helps me out. This makes the entire enemy team look at me while leaving their Zarya vulnerable and creating a lot of space for my teammates. You might ask me, when is it a good opportunity to dive someone? Well, it's pretty simple. Just look at their cooldowns and see if they wasted any of them. For example, if Kiriko uses her TP or Suzu or both, she's a pretty easy target to kill. She doesn't have any escape. Another good example is Zarya not having any bubbles. If you manage to dive her and use your own bubble, she will have no healing, which means it's an easy kill for your team. Now, these two examples are nearly enough to teach you how to play the character in every single situation, but they're a good starting point. Now, for those that are interested, these are my keybinds on Winston. Melee is bound on the right click, and Sniper Monkey ability is bound on my mouse 4 button and mouse 5 as well, which are the extra buttons on the side of my mouse. Everything else is virtually unchanged. You don't have to do any of this, but it might help some of you. Now, I have also had a lot of people ask me about my crosshair, and these are the settings to have the same crosshair as me. Now, to finish off the entire guide, I do want to talk about the best Winston maps and when to play him exactly. And for that, I've made another beautiful tier list. On top of this list, we have the best maps for Winston because they have a lot of high grounds that Winston can abuse for his own advantage. That's because it makes Winston really hard to focus, and he can just drop on your backline without using his jump and then use his jump to either finish off kills or just run away. This allows for Winston to have a lot more options and play a lot smarter. On the opposite end of this tier list, we have some maps that are really bad for Winston because they have big open spaces, which means he cannot dive or flank anyone without taking a lot of damage first. You always want to make sure that you dive people with full HP, and whenever you get poked a lot, this means you cannot really dive because you're gonna die really fast. So for maps like Junkertown, where first point is very open and doesn't really have much cover or high grounds, it's really hard to attack with Winston because you can't really dive anyone without getting shot in the head, or they're playing so far away, it's just literally impossible to dive them. Meanwhile, the fan favorite map King's Row is really difficult for him because it's really tight and closed off, and you again cannot really use many high grounds here. So whenever they play a Reinhardt comp, you can't really play in many positions where you do not get hard focused and absolutely killed. Your only choice is to play super aggressive, and if you're gonna play super aggressive and just rush into them, you might as well play Reinhardt yourself. The other two rows are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to delve too deep into them. This is just my opinion. Your opinion might be different, and in general, I do think you can make Winston work on every map, but your biggest struggle will always be the enemy composition, and if the enemy team doesn't want you to play the game, you will not get to play the game. So if you want to be a really cool Winston player like me and hit all of those fancy ass juggles, then get ready for a lot of emotional damage and constant bullying. Anyways, this will be the end of this video. Thank you everyone for watching. This was the very first guide that I have ever made, and I hope you enjoyed it because I had no idea what I was doing. And don't forget to check out my Twitch because I stream on twitch.tv/bogur. I play mostly Winston. I also post a lot of useful guides on TikTok, so don't forget to check that out. and I have a personal Discord channel where you can ask me anything you deem important. Thank you again, and see you next time.